New Year's Eve. A desperate mother. An empty formula can. One wrong text message that will change two lives forever. This is a story about what happens when kindness finds you in the darkest moment, and why sometimes the universe puts exactly the right person in your path. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this remind us why humanity is worth fighting for. Now let's begin. The formula can was empty. Nora Vandenberg shook it one more time, as if hope alone could make something appear. It didn't. She set it down on the narrow counter of her studio apartment in Amsterdam-Noord, where the single overhead bulb had been flickering for 4 days because she couldn't afford a replacement. In her arms, 8-month-old Sophie whimpered. Not the loud, demanding cry of a healthy baby, but that quiet, exhausted sound of a child too hungry to protest anymore. "I know, sweetheart," Nora whispered, her voice cracking. "Mama's working on it." Outside, fireworks crackled in the distance. New Year's Eve. The whole city was celebrating, counting down to midnight, making resolutions about gym memberships and holidays to Spain, all the things people worried about when they weren't wondering how to feed their children. Nora opened her wallet. €3.40. Formula cost €22. The cheap kind. The sensitive formula Sophie needed. The kind that didn't upset her tiny stomach, cost $29. She'd done the math 100 times. The math never changed. Her phone buzzed. Another notification she didn't need to read. Rent overdue, 11 days. Final notice. Nora walked to the window, bouncing Sophie gently. From here, if she leaned just right, she could see the lights of central Amsterdam glittering across the water. That other world, where people were probably drinking champagne right now, wearing clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. For months ago, she'd been closer to that world. Not wealthy, never wealthy, but stable. A real job at Bergman and Associates, one of Amsterdam's respected accounting firms. Benefits. A desk with her nameplate. A future. Then she'd notice the numbers. Small discrepancies. Transactions that didn't add up. Money flowing to vendors she couldn't identify. She'd asked her supervisor about it. Just a question. Just trying to understand. 1 week later, Human Resources called her in. Position eliminated due to restructuring. They took her laptop before she could save anything. Security escorted her out like a criminal. That was September. This was December 31st. Now she worked nights at a convenience store for €11 an hour, no benefits, and a manager who looked at her like she was dirt on his shoe. The numbers still didn't work. Every week, she fell further behind. And now the formula was gone. There was one person left to call. One lifeline Nora had been saving for a true emergency. Beatrice Koenig. Nora had met her at Refuge Harbor, a women's shelter in Rotterdam, 2 years ago. 7 months pregnant, sleeping in her car after her boyfriend emptied their joint account and disappeared. Beatrice ran the shelter, 69 years old, silver-haired, with a heart big enough to hold every broken soul who walked through her doors. When Nora left after Sophie's birth, Beatrice had pressed a card into her hand. "You call me anytime. I mean it. You're not alone." Nora had never called. Pride was sometimes the only thing she had left. But Sophie was hungry. She pulled out her phone and found Beatrice's number, the one she'd saved 20 months ago. Her finger trembled as she typed. "Mrs. Beatrice, I know tonight is busy and I'm so sorry to bother you, but I don't have anyone else. Sophie's formula ran out and I only have €3. I just need €50 to get through until my paycheck Friday. I promise I'll pay you back. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to ask." She hit send before she could talk herself out of it. 11:47 p.m. What Nora didn't know, couldn't know, was that Beatrice Koenig had changed her phone number 3 weeks ago. The old number now belonged to someone else. 52 floors above Amsterdam, Lucas van der Meer stood alone in a penthouse worth €9 million, watching fireworks explode over a city that worshipped him. The space around him was a monument to success. Marble imported from Italy. Museum-quality art. Furniture that cost more than most people earned in a year. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the canals below, the historic city center glowing, the harbor stretching toward the North Sea. On the kitchen island sat an unopened bottle of Dom Perignon. His assistant had left it with a note reminding him that the New Year's gala at the Amstel Hotel was expecting him at 10. Lucas hadn't gone. He told himself he was tired. Early meetings on January 2nd. He'd been to enough parties. The truth was simpler. He couldn't stand one more countdown surrounded by people who wanted things from him. His money, his connections, his name on their charity boards. Nobody at that gala would see him. They'd see what he could give them. So he stayed home. Alone. In 9 million euros worth of empty space. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably another pitch. Another scam. He almost swiped it away. Then the preview caught his eye. Sophie's formula ran out, and I only have 3 euros. Lucas opened the message. Read it once. Twice. A third time. This wasn't a scam. Scammers didn't apologize 4 times in 3 sentences. Scammers asked for wire transfers and cryptocurrency, not 50 euros to feed a baby on New Year's Eve. This was real. Someone had texted a wrong number, reaching out to a lifeline that wasn't there, asking for 50 euros to feed their baby. 50 euros. The automatic tip he left on a bar tab without thinking. Something cold moved through Lucas's chest. 35 years ago. Rotterdam. A one-room apartment above a laundromat. His mother, Astrid, working 3 jobs that still didn't cover rent and food and medicine for the cough she couldn't shake. He remembered being hungry. Not the vague hunger of a missed lunch, but the deep, cellular hunger of poverty that made you lightheaded. That taught you to ignore the stomach cramps because complaining didn't make food appear. He remembered his mother apologizing. I'm sorry, Lucas. Mama's working on it. She died 2 weeks before Christmas. Pneumonia, the doctor said. But Lucas knew the truth. She died of poverty, of not being able to afford time off when she was sick, of not having insurance, of a system that chewed up people like her and spit out their bones. After that came foster care, group homes, years of surviving because no one was going to save him. He built Vandermeer Ventures from nothing, made himself into someone the world couldn't ignore, accumulated more money than any human could spend in 10 lifetimes. But he'd never forgotten that apartment above the laundromat. Never forgotten his mother, apologizing for things that weren't her fault. Lucas picked up his phone and called the only person he trusted with tasks requiring absolute discretion. Heinrich, I need you to trace a phone number. Now. 12 minutes later, Lucas had everything. Nora Vandenberg, 29 years old. Address, apartment 3B, 142 Oostlijk Handelsgade, Amsterdam Noord. Single mother, 1 daughter, 8 months old. Former accountant at Bergman and Associates, terminated 4 months ago. Currently part-time cashier at a convenience store. The credit report made his chest tighten. Max cards. Medical debt from childbirth. She was paying 20 euros at a time. A car repossessed 6 weeks ago. Preliminary eviction paperwork filed 5 days ago. This woman was drowning. Lucas grabbed his coat. Heinrich, meet me at the garage. We're making a stop. They stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy first. Lucas walked the aisles himself, ignoring the cashier's confused stares. Formula, the expensive kind, 3 cans. Diapers. Baby food. Infant paracetamol. A soft blanket with moons and stars. Then groceries from a market still open for the holiday rush. Real food. Fresh fruit. Good bread. Things Nora Vandenberg probably hadn't been able to afford in months. The building on Oostlijk Handelsgade was tired. Decades of deferred maintenance. Landlords who squeezed every cent from tenants while giving nothing back. The hallway smelled like mildew and old cooking oil. Half the lights were burned out. The elevator had an out-of-order sign that looked permanent. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. From inside apartment 3B, Lucas heard a thin sound, almost like a kitten mewing. A baby crying. Too exhausted to really cry anymore. He knocked. Footsteps inside. Light. Hesitant. Who is it? A woman's voice, high with fear. My name is Lucas Vandermeer. I received a text message meant for someone named Beatrice. A message asking for help. Silence. I'm not here to hurt you. I brought the formula. Please, open the door. Seconds ticked by. Then the deadbolt clicked. The door opened 3 inches, stopped by a chain lock. Through the gap, Lucas saw a face. Young but worn. Dark blonde hair in a messy ponytail. Eyes red-rimmed from crying. She was small, wearing an oversized sweater with a hole in the sleeve, holding a baby against her shoulder. The baby had her mother's coloring, but her cheeks were pale instead of pink, the sign of a child not eating enough. You're Nora Vandenberg. Her eyes went wide. Fear spiked. How do you know my name? I traced the number. When I got your message, I traced it. I know that sounds, he stopped. There was no way to make that sound less alarming. You texted the wrong number. It came to me, and I couldn't just ignore it. Nora stared at him through the gap. Her eyes moved over what she could see. The expensive coat. The watch. The security man behind him. This is some kind of scam. It's not a scam. Lucas held up the bags. It's formula and food. No strings. You asked for 50 euros, and I wanted to do more than just send money. The baby whimpered. Nora's arms tightened automatically. You came to Amsterdam Noord at midnight on New Year's Eve to bring formula to a stranger? Yes. Why? Lucas looked at her, really looked past the fear and exhaustion. Because 35 years ago, my mother was in the same situation. And nobody came. Something cracked in Nora's face. Your mother? She was a single mother in Rotterdam. Worked 3 jobs that still weren't enough. She died when I was 7 because she couldn't afford to see a doctor. Nora was silent. Her eyes flicked to her daughter, then back to him. I grew up in foster care after that. Group homes. Fighting for food. Lucas's voice was steady, but something underneath it trembled. I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone the way no one helped my mother, I would take it. The chain rattled. The door opened wider. Nora stood in the doorway of the saddest apartment Lucas had ever seen. A hot plate on a rickety table. A mattress on the floor. A second-hand crib. And the empty formula can on the counter, like a monument to everything gone wrong. I'm Nora. This is Sophie. Lucas van der Meer. He stepped inside, setting down the bags. I believe someone is hungry. The clock hit midnight, just as Sophie started eating. Fireworks boomed somewhere over the city, probably the wealthy neighborhoods celebrating in style. The sound couldn't quite reach this apartment. Only a faint glow made it through the thin window. But Nora wasn't watching fireworks. She was watching her daughter drink formula for the first time in hours. Tiny hands grasping the bottle. Eyes slowly closing in contentment. There you go, sweetheart. There you go. Lucas stood by the window, giving her space. She studied him while Sophie fed. He looked different than she'd expected a billionaire to look. She knew who he was now. Everyone in Dutch finance knew Lucas van der Meer. Magazine covers. Perfectly tailored suits. Settings that screamed power and money. But here, in her crumbling apartment, he looked almost human. His coat was expensive, yes, but he'd unbuttoned it and pushed up the sleeves. His dark hair was slightly disheveled. And his eyes held something she hadn't expected. Loneliness. She recognized it because she saw it in her own mirror every day. You didn't have to do this, Nora said finally. I asked for 50 euros. I know. You also apologized 4 times in 3 sentences. Nora flushed. I don't usually. I've never asked for help like that. What happened? His voice was gentle, not demanding. She could have refused. But something about him, his calmness, his lack of judgment, made her want to tell the truth. I got fired 4 months ago. From Bergman and Associates. She watched to see if the name registered. If it did, he didn't show it. I was an accountant, and I found something in the books. Transactions that didn't make sense. Small, but a lot of them. Money going to vendors that didn't seem to exist. Lucas's posture shifted. Attentive now. I asked my supervisor about it. Just a question. Nora's voice hardened. 1 week later, they called me into HR. Position eliminated. They took my laptop before I could save anything. And you think you were really fired for looking too closely. I know I was. Nora adjusted Sophie in her arms. Numbers stick in my head. They always have. And these numbers were wrong. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Bergman and Associates. I know that company. They're a partner on several projects I'm involved with, including a charitable foundation. Nora looked up sharply. What foundation? The Lighthouse Foundation. It provides grants to shelters supporting women and children in crisis. Lucas met her eyes, including a place called Refuge Harbor. The room seemed to shrink around Nora. Refuge Harbor. The shelter Beatrice runs. The shelter where I stayed when I was pregnant. Yes. You're telling me the company that fired me is partnered with your foundation, which funds the shelter where I was going to ask for help. It appears so. That can't be coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences either. Lucas reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Cream-colored. Embossed letters. Van der Meer Ventures. Lucas van der Meer, founder and CEO. Keep this. When you're ready, when Sophie is fed and you've had time to think, call the number on the back. If what you found is what I think you found, I need to know more. Nora took the card. The paper was thick and smooth between her fingers. What do you think I found? Lucas's jaw tightened. I think you may have stumbled onto something that's been happening under my nose for years. Something I should have caught. And didn't. He moved toward the door. Get some sleep. Take care of Sophie. When you're ready, you know where to find me. He was at the door when Nora spoke again. Why are you helping me? Really? Rich people don't. They're not like this. Lucas turned back. In the flickering light, his face looked younger. More vulnerable. Because I remember what it feels like to have no one. And because someone should have helped my mother, and no one did. I've spent 35 years trying to be the person who shows up. He paused. Tonight, the need came directly to me. So here I am. The door closed behind him. Nora stood there for a long time. Holding Sophie. Holding the business card. Holding the weight of a night that had started with despair and ended with something she was afraid to name. Hope, maybe. Or maybe just the terrifying knowledge that her life had just become very, very complicated. 3 weeks later, Nora sat in the lobby of Vandermeer Ventures, a 40-story glass tower in Amsterdam's Zuida's financial district that looked designed to intimidate visitors before they even reached the elevator. It was working. She was wearing her only interview outfit, a black blazer from a thrift shop, trousers that didn't quite match, shoes polished until the scuffs almost disappeared. Sophie was at daycare, the first time Nora could afford it since losing her job. Lucas had sent a bank transfer after New Year's, just enough to cover a month of childcare and groceries. With a note, no strings. This is so you have time to think clearly. She'd almost sent it back. Pride was a hell of a thing. Then Sophie got an ear infection. Emergency room. Antibiotics. Bills she couldn't pay. That's when Nora picked up the phone. Now here she was, waiting to interview for a job she didn't understand, with a man who confused her in ways she couldn't name. Miss Vandenberg. The receptionist gestured toward the elevators. Mr. Vandermeer is ready for you. The executive floor was glass and chrome and carefully positioned greenery. Lucas's assistant, Ingrid, elegant and silver-haired, led Nora through an open workspace where people in expensive clothes solved expensive problems. She felt their eyes. Who is she? Why is she here? What does Lucas Vandermeer want with her? She wondered the same things. His office was enormous. Windows on 2 sides framed Amsterdam like a photograph. A desk the size of a small boat. Art that belonged in the Rijksmuseum. And Lucas, standing by the window in a charcoal suit, looking nothing like the man who'd carried grocery bags into her apartment. Nora, please sit. She perched on the edge of an expensive leather chair. Before we talk about work, Lucas said, taking the seat beside hers instead of behind the desk, I want to make something clear. Whatever you decide, the help I've provided comes with no conditions. If you don't want this job, you're under no obligation. Those were gifts, not payments. She hadn't expected that. I understand. Good. He leaned back. I've had my team run a quiet audit of transactions between Bergman and my Lighthouse Foundation. Nora's stomach dropped. What did you find? Nothing conclusive. Which is suspicious. Lucas's eyes hardened. The records are too clean. Too perfect. In my experience, when something looks that perfect, it's been manufactured. I don't have proof. They took everything. You have your memory. You said numbers stick. They do. But I can't go to the authorities and say I remember transactions I can't document. No. But you can help me find new evidence. Lucas's eyes met hers. I want to hire you. Not as a regular accountant. I need you working directly with me. Special projects. Internal investigations. Nora stared at him. Why me? You have teams of auditors. People with credentials. People who might be compromised. His voice hardened. The person I suspect has been here from nearly the beginning. He has allies everywhere. I need someone I can trust. Someone who doesn't owe anyone here anything. Someone who already found something once. You think you can trust me? We've met twice. You could have asked for much more than 50 euros. When you realized who I was, you could have made demands. Instead, you've been trying to figure out how to pay me back for formula. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. That tells me more about your character than any background check. Clara felt her face warm. What exactly would this job involve? He outlined it. Special projects auditor, reporting directly to him. Access to all financial records. Salary 3 times her old pay. Full benefits. On-site daycare. Sophie could be in the same building. It was the best offer she'd ever received. Also potentially the most dangerous. If I find something, what happens to me? Last time, I lost everything. Last time, you were alone. Lucas leaned forward. This time, you have me. Nora thought about Sophie. About bills. About Refuge Harbor and all the women depending on support that might be getting stolen. When do I start? The first month was observation. Learning systems, workflows, rhythms. Learning to walk through halls where everyone wondered who this nobody was. She also learned to watch Willem Decker. Lucas hadn't told her who he suspected, but she wasn't stupid. The CFO of Vandermeer Ventures was 54, silver-haired and silver-tongued, with charisma that made people want to agree with him. He'd been Lucas's partner since nearly the beginning, one of the first investors, one of the architects of their growth. He was also the person who signed off on all charitable disbursements. Miss Vandenberg. Decker approached her in the break room one afternoon. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Willem Decker. Mr. Decker. Nice to meet you. Lucas tells me you're working on special projects. Very mysterious. The words were light, but something lurked underneath. What exactly are these special projects? Mr. Vandermeer has me well organized. Of course. Another smile. Well, if you need anything, my door is always open. He walked away. Nora texted Lucas. Decker introduced himself. Asked about my work. Reply seconds later. We knew he'd notice. Be careful. Weeks turned into months. Nora settled into a routine. Daycare drop-off at 7:30. Work until 6. Dinner and bath time and bedtime stories. And somewhere between spreadsheets and late nights, she started to know Lucas Vandermeer. It began with overtime. Nora often stayed past 6, chasing threads in the data. Lucas kept late hours too. Not because he had to, but because he seemed to have nowhere else to be. They'd end up talking. About work at first. Then about other things. Tell me about your mother. Nora asked one night when the office was empty and the city glittered outside. Lucas went still. That thing he did, deciding how much to expose. Astrid. Everyone called her Aster. He looked out the window. She came from Poland at 20. No money. Barely any Dutch. But she had this belief that things could be better. That if she worked hard enough, she could build a life. Did she? She tried. 3 jobs. I barely saw her sometimes. But when she was there, his voice softened. She was completely there. Telling me stories about Krakow. About our family. About who she wanted me to become. Nora thought of her own mother. Double shifts at a textile factory. Hands rough and cracked. Still finding energy to help with homework. How did she die? Pneumonia. Started as a cold she couldn't take time off for. By the time she went to a clinic, it was too far gone. I'm sorry. It was 35 years ago. Grief doesn't expire. Lucas looked at her. Really looked. No, it doesn't. The silence stretched. Comfortable. What happened after? Nora asked gently. After she died? Foster care. Group homes. I learned that asking for help marks you as a target. That the only person who saves you is yourself. And you did. You saved yourself. I built something. He looked at her. Whether that's the same as saving myself. Sometimes I wonder. All this money, all this power. And I still feel like that 7-year-old boy waiting for someone to come back for him. Nora reached out without thinking. Touched his hand. First physical contact since that first night. Lucas looked down at her hand on his. Didn't pull away. You came for me, Nora said quietly. That night. You didn't have to. You needed help. So did you. The words felt true. You were alone in that penthouse with unopened champagne. And you drove to Newark because a stranger's text made you feel less alone. Something caught in his breath. A small loss of composure. Maybe, he admitted. They sat in silence. Her hand on his. Watching the city lights. Something was shifting between them. Something dangerous and inevitable. By April, Nora had found the pattern. It was elegant. Whoever designed the theft had skill. Small amounts, never enough to trigger flags. Distributed across dozens of vendors, many legitimate, until you traced the money further. Shell companies. Multiple jurisdictions. Trails that went cold. But Nora's memory didn't let trails go cold. She remembered the vendors from Bergman. She found the same names, or suspiciously similar ones, in the Lighthouse Foundation's records. Someone had been stealing from the foundation for years. Millions of euros that should have gone to shelters, to children's programs, to people like her, diverted into accounts she was slowly tracing back to their source. And all the authorizations led to Willem Decker. She presented her findings to Lucas after hours. This is Decker. She spread printouts across his desk. The shell companies trace back to entities he controls. The timing correlates with his travel schedule. These transactions are identical to what I saw at Bergman. Lucas studied the documents. His face was unreadable, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. How long? At least 6 years. Possibly longer. How much? Nora had done the math. Between 14 and 17 million euros. Lucas set the papers down carefully. Willem Decker. I trusted him with everything. He was there when I was nothing. Just a kid with an idea and no backing. He believed in me before anyone else. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did your job. He looked up. We need more. Decker has lawyers. We need a witness who can connect the dots. I might know someone. Nora had been preparing. When I worked at Bergman, there was a manager. Jonas Visser. He tried to warn me, I think. But he was too scared to speak up. Find him. Carefully. The office door opened without warning. Willem Decker stood in the doorway. Silver hair perfect. Suit impeccable. Smile fixed. Working late. I saw the lights on. Nora's heart spiked, but she forced calm. The documents faced Lucas. Decker couldn't see details. Just quarterly reports, Lucas said smoothly. Nora has a talent for finding inconsistencies. Does she now? Decker's eyes moved to Nora. I've been meaning to chat with you, Miss Vandenberg. Perhaps you could spare time tomorrow. Of course. Let Ingrid know when. Decker nodded. Smile never wavering. Don't stay too late, you two. Nothing here is worth losing sleep over. He left. Nora didn't breathe until the elevator closed. He knows, she said quietly. Then we move faster. A week later, Decker cornered Nora alone in her office. Miss Vandenberg, I hear you're working very hard. Nora kept her voice steady. That's my job. Decker smiled, not reaching his eyes. I'll be direct. You have a young daughter. You just got stability back. Don't let curiosity destroy that. Nora's blood went cold. Some questions, Decker continued softly, once asked can't be taken back. Think carefully about which ones you want to ask. He left. That night, Nora told Lucas about the meeting. His jaw tightened with fury. Not at her. At Decker's audacity. He just exposed himself. If he were innocent, he wouldn't threaten you. They moved the plan forward. The confrontation happened in Lucas's conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Furniture worth more than Nora's lifetime earnings. Present Lucas. Nora. Willem Decker. And Petra Jansen, Vandermeer Ventures' chief legal officer, silver-haired and unnervingly calm. Nora presented her findings. 20 minutes. Methodical. Transaction flows. Shell companies. Signatures tracing to one source. Decker's smile disappeared. This is absurd. Circumstantial patterns with innocent explanations. The patterns aren't circumstantial, Nora replied. The shell companies trace to entities you control. The signatures are yours. The same structures appeared at Bergman, where I was terminated for asking questions. Decker switched tactics. Attacked Nora. She's a disgruntled former employee looking for revenge. This investigation is compromised by her obvious bias. What even is her relationship with you, Lucas? That she's even sitting here. Enough, Willem. Lucas stood. Decker pressed forward. 14 years, Lucas. You'd believe a stranger over your partner of 14 years. Lucas looked him dead in the eye. I think 14 years ago, I trusted the wrong person. The room froze. Petra Jansen spoke. Mr. Decker, I've independently verified everything Miss Vandenberg presented. It's all accurate. Furthermore, she paused. We have a witness. The door opened. Jonas Visser walked in, pale but determined, carrying a briefcase. Hello, Mr. Decker. Been a while. Decker's face drained of color. I have copies of everything you made us delete at Bergman, Jonas said, voice shaking but clear. I've kept them 6 years, waiting for the right time. Today is that time. Decker didn't accept defeat gracefully. You think it's this simple? I didn't work alone. There are people more powerful than you behind this, Lucas. If I fall, they'll destroy everyone. A threat and a confession. Petra held up her phone. I've been recording since this meeting started. Legal, since all participants were notified of documentation. You just confessed in front of witnesses and on tape. Decker lunged for the door. Security was waiting outside. Lucas's orders. 14 years, Lucas said, voice like ice. I gave you everything. And you stole from women and children who had nothing. Police officers entered. Petra had contacted them when the evidence became solid. Willem Dekker was handcuffed. At the door, he turned. His eyes found Nora. Pure hatred. This isn't over. You've made powerful enemies. Then he was gone. Nora finally breathed. The aftermath stretched months. Dekker's arrest unraveled a network beyond Van der Meer Ventures. Executives at Bergman were implicated. The scandal dominated Dutch business news for weeks. Nora testified before investigators. She sat in rooms with lawyers, telling her story over and over. The numbers she'd noticed. The questions she'd asked. The retaliation. The wrong number text that led her to the one person with power and will to make things right. Journalists loved it. The struggling single mother who brought down a financial empire. They wanted interviews. Book deals. Film rights. Nora declined them all. I want you to run the foundation. 8 weeks after Dekker's arrest, the Lighthouse Foundation needed new leadership. Nora stared at Lucas. I don't have an MBA. You have something better. Integrity. You saw something wrong and refused to look away, even when it cost everything. Nora thought about Refuge Harbor. About Beatrice. About all the women depending on support that had been stolen. The foundation funds Refuge Harbor. The place that took me in. Yes, you could make sure the money actually reaches people who need it. Nora took a breath. Okay, I'll do it. 1 year later, December 31st. Nora stood on the balcony of Lucas's penthouse, watching fireworks over Amsterdam. Inside, the penthouse had transformed. Photos on walls, Nora and Sophie at Vondelpark, at the zoo, at holiday dinners. A high chair in the kitchen. Baby gates in hallways. All the mess of actually living in a space instead of existing in it. Exactly 1 year, Lucas said, standing beside her. Since you sent that text. Since I accidentally asked a stranger for 50 euros. Nora shook her head. I was so humiliated when you showed up. You were terrified, but you let me in. I didn't have much choice. Sophie was hungry. You always have choices. Lucas's voice was quiet. You could have refused. Tried to handle everything alone. Instead, you took a chance on the possibility that things could be different. The clock on his phone hit midnight. Fireworks intensified across the city. Happy New Year, Nora. Happy New Year, Lucas. He kissed her. Soft and certain. Inside, her phone buzzed. A text from Beatrice Koenig. Happy New Year, sweetheart. Saw the article about your foundation expansion. You're doing beautiful work. So proud of you. Nora smiled, tears prickling. 1 year ago, she'd been alone and desperate, typing a message to someone who couldn't receive it. The miracle had come anyway. It looked like a man in an expensive coat, standing in her doorway with formula and eyes full of ghosts. It looked like a job. Purpose. A chance to help people who'd once helped her. It looked like falling in love with someone who understood that wealth meant nothing without connection. That power meant nothing without purpose. Sophie stirred in her sleep, that soft sound through the baby monitor. Lucas's breath caught the way it always did. I should check on her, Nora said. Let me. Lucas released her hand. I've got it. She watched him go. The billionaire who'd never had a family, walking toward the nursery where a child who wasn't his by blood had somehow become his in every way that mattered. Her phone buzzed again. Beatrice P.S. Thank you for the new funding. The shelter is going to help so many more people. You've done good, Clara. Nora typed back. Thank you, Mrs. Beatrice. I had a lot of help. Behind her, Lucas's voice came soft through the monitor. Hey, little one. It's okay. I'm here. Nora smiled and stepped inside. The new year was already beginning. And so, a wrong number became the right destiny. Sometimes miracles don't come from heaven. They come from strangers who choose to care. From people who remember their own pain and refuse to let others suffer alone. Kindness isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. And sometimes one choice changes everything. If this story reminded you that good people still exist, please like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more powerful stories that prove kindness still matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in second chances. See you in the next story.